Shreveport, it was sort of inspired by Misery and Deliverance. It kind of occurred to me that there hadn't been, Misery's over 20 years old. I was at work in Shreveport on another film, and I was being taken out for rehearsals way far from my hotel. And these two guys, you know, who I'd never met before, were driving me out there, and I started kind of messing with myself along the lines of what if they weren't who they said they were. And so it struck me that that was a movie. And so my co-writer and I came up with this idea about an actor kidnapped on location by a guy whose wife he had an affair with. And that's sort of what the movie is. And these two dudes take me out to a shack in the swamp, and it gets pretty nasty. And so it's sort of a thriller along those lines, but there was this great juxtaposition inherent to the story of technology and this rudimentary setting, because what they end up doing is they get into my phone and release pictures on the internet, like embarrassing photos. They take over my character's Twitter feed and write anti-Semitic, like racist, homophobic stuff. And this is all happening in this dilapidated shack on the edge of a swamp. And so that was sort of a way in for us in regards to the music, is sort of trying to play with those contradictions, like the sort of technology within the swamp. Yeah, I mean, I had enough knowledge of the area, having worked in Louisiana a bunch, that I was able to write from that, perspective. But the most awesome thing was we got to build the honey hole, which is the shack that I'm held in. That's what it's called. We got to build that on location, not in a sound stage, not in this sort of artificial environment. So, I mean, there were snakes out there and gators, and the body of water right near where the shack is, literally there's 12 to 15 baby gators swimming in it at all times, and spiders about this big, and so all of that stuff, I think you feel, it's hot and dirty and sweaty, and I think that registers in the film.
Well, on the environment of it, the sounds that you guys recorded, even just the freestyle sounds that you caught at night were deep.
Well, because you'll also hear things out in that environment that you can't categorize. Like you'll hear something sometimes that sounds like a monkey, and there's no monkeys in the swamp, but so that gives you a lot of license in terms of creating the soundscape. There's times in the movie where the effects that we've put in, like, it sort of sounds like Jurassic Park outside, but which is pretty scary and fun for the audience, I think, because you're like, what the hell is making that noise?
We did, in fact. Yeah, we actually, because the movie's very non-traditional, and rather like an orchestral score, it's more of a tonal-based score. And so we started working with like some weird insects and sounds to see what we could do to like manipulate them into percussion, and throw it at Ryan to see if he'd be like, this is terrible, or this is working. So we started with that kind of idea, but we definitely did work with certain elements that was there, for sure.
Pretty involved. Like, we had extensive note sessions, and we would send things back and forth and discuss passes that they made at certain portions of the movie. It's funny though, like, as a first-time filmmaker, I didn't know what to expect from that process, and I got really lucky with these guys. In terms of their openness and their passion. When you're working on a small budget, and you're sort of asking favors and people to cut their price and things like that, the passion sort of bridges that gap, that sort of is absent regarding money. If you find people who connect to the material and get excited about it, then not having all of those resources sort of becomes, less of an issue. But there's this thing that when I was thinking, movies have too much score, and it's so cloying and typical, and my movie's going to be bare of score, and you get in the edit room and you're like, oh, this needs music. And not because it's not good, but just everything does. Like, it's essential. It's such a key component. And I knew that there would certainly, because it's a thriller at a certain stage, so I knew that music would become important, but I didn't realize how much I'd want and need it until I got into the process with my own film.